More representations. She's quite the friendly creature. That's Kelly. I like this representation better. Those are heads, by the way, and hands. So she sort of represents, well, very complex things. She represents death. She represents transformation. In this, I really like this representation. I think it's brilliant. So imagine that what the people were doing who formulated these representations, what they were trying to do was to make a representation of the domain of threat itself, right? So that they could deal with the idea that, because we can say threat. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, threat is the category of all threatening things. And so then you can think about threat, and you can think about threat across all those individual instances, and maybe you can figure out how to deal with threat, right? What's the best way to be in the world so that you most effectively deal with threat? Well, that's sort of like, apart from how do you deal with pain, that's sort of like the ultimate question of human beings. Do you want to be terrified? No. So you want to be in danger? No. So like you better figure out how to deal with threat. So first of all, you have to conceptualize it. So we'll take a look at this representation. So that's Kelly. Her hair is on fire. Well, fire, you know, that's a numinous phenomena, dangerous but transformative. She's wearing a headdress of skulls. She has a weapon in this hand, and she has a tiger's tongue. She often has a snake around her waist. None of these do, but she often does. But in this case, then that's because, you know, it's a snake. We've already covered that. Well, these things that look like snakes here aren't. You notice how her belly is concave? Well, it's because she's just given birth to this unfortunate person that she happens to be standing on, and she's eating him intestines first. And that's a fire ring, which she is in, and then it's got skulls on the inside of it. It's like, what's that supposed to do? Well, partly it's supposed to represent that which terrifies you. It's like, yeah, fair enough, man. Because I don't imagine you saw all those things in there before I explained them, but someone who was familiar with that image would know what it meant. It's like some poor artist was sitting there thinking, well, how do I represent destruction? And it's like, bang, whoa, okay, we'll put that down and then we won't look at it again. So, and then what do you do with this? You make sacrifices to it. And you think, well, that's kind of primitive. You know, first of all, well, that doesn't really exist. Well, it does if it's an amalgam of threat symbols, I can tell you that. It exists, that's for sure. So it exists as an abstraction, if nothing else. Do you offer it sacrifices? Well, what the hell do you think you do? What are you doing in class? Why aren't you like drinking vodka and snorting cocaine? You know, because you could be doing that. Instead, here you are, listening to me, you know, slaving away in university. You're young. It's like, really? You've got nothing better to do than sit there? You know, well, what you're willing to forego today's pleasure for tomorrow's advantage. And that's what sacrifice is. And human beings discovered that dramatically first, you know, like we were apes, for God's sake. We didn't just leap up and think, oh, we better save for tomorrow. You know, it took thousands of years for that idea to emerge. And it emerged in dramatic form. And it was sort of like, well, society is sort of like a god. No, they weren't thinking this through. It was like, if you're going to represent society, well, it's like this masculine god that's always judging the hell out of you, that's everywhere all at the same time. It's like, yeah, that's true, absolutely. And what do you have to do with it? Well, you have to give it what it wants. Why do you have to give it what it wants? Because it'll crush you if you don't. And that's exactly right. And if you're lucky and you give it the right sacrifice, then it'll smile on you and you get to have a good life.